Welcome. Can you hear me well? Or do I have to shout? It's a big room. Actually, I thought that it will be a lightning talk more than a presentation, and mostly designed to start a conversation among us and not make me speak for longer than necessary. So why I propose this topic and what's my interest in it? I suppose that all of us are aware of the new data protection regulation being in existence, really in force and coming into full operation next year. Probably we all agree that it is a sort of compromise, so we might not be very happy with all its elements, but some mechanisms that showed up in the GDPR that were not there before, in my opinion, could be interesting opportunities for us as digital rights advocates to do something about it. But there are two conditions for using these opportunities, and these two conditions really I would like to discuss a bit with you. So first is preventing that these mechanisms are abused or misused or simply not used effectively by the industry, as the industry will mostly be those who implement them. Second, prevent the risk that nobody will know about them, or at least nobody will know our narrative. So I can imagine a situation that the whole narrative around GDPR implementation is taken by European Commission, DPAs and key industry players, either discouraging people from using the new rights or making them seem very complicated or making them seem very irrelevant. And we actually have nothing new under the sun next year. So there is business as usual, people still doing nothing more about their rights, and us as the network losing opportunities. So I see a challenge here, and I wanted to quickly take you through my main ideas where I see particular challenges and my idea how we can move forward as the network. So speaking of concrete mechanisms, definitely the use of consent will be extremely important. In this point, from Polish perspective, I come from Poland, this is more a deterioration than improvement, because we have had in Poland explicit consent as requirement, not only for sensitive data. We lost that. Now we have implicit consent mechanism built in throughout the whole Europe. Of course, with some guarantees in the GDPR saying that a person needs to do something. It cannot be implied from doing nothing. That's a good thing, so to say. But I'm afraid that many companies will experiment with interpreting consent from activity of users. So we will have a clear activity of the user interpreted as consent and not exactly expressing the consent as communication. This is one risk that I think we should be discussing with industry now before they start creating all the consent clauses and mechanisms and maybe showing good practices. The other risk in that area is the opposite, that there will be inflation of pop-ups and consent clauses meaning nothing, but coming from everywhere, where people will not be able to differentiate what they are really accepting when this is necessary. So the industry will go the other way around. Will do exactly what was done with the cookie directive some years ago, which will lead to the situation where users hate the idea of consenting and click on the pop-ups just to get rid of them. And this is also a negative scenario. So in my opinion, we should, as the network, working of course together with people we know from industry, try to think of good practices, how to reach balance between these two extremes. Consent by doing stuff but not by communicating what we want, what we don't know, and consent by clicking on pop-ups and just consenting to everything. There must be a good practice somewhere in between. So that's the first area where I see our activity needed. The second area is privacy by default, which of course can be a wonderful thing if we imagine the world where a user opens, I don't know, Facebook on mobile phone and just doesn't have to worry about anything because all the settings are so privacy friendly, or a user is buying the tracker for running or health tracker, and doesn't have to worry at all about what you discussed in the morning because all the privacy settings are there. That's a beautiful world, but something tells me that it's not exactly the world we will see next year unless something changes. So again, I think that the broad idea of privacy by default will need a lot of concrete interpretation coming up as good practices, as examples how these settings should actually look like. And again, we probably could do some work here to propose these good practices, or maybe identify them in the market and promote them as being good practices. Third important thing for me is data portability, which again can be a great benefit for users if they start doing it, but there are many complications. If you read that provision, you will first see that it only refers to data generated by the user and not generated by the app, which makes sense to an extent because we don't want to force companies to, as they say, speak about their trade secrets and show exactly what their apps are doing. But who can draw the line precisely today between what I put in my, let's keep using the Facebook account as example, and what was generated by the account? I mean, that line is pretty fine. Many interactions that the app generates. What about my interactions? Is this still my data because I'm interacting and I'm typing all these messages that I sent, or is it an app because that enables me interactions which wouldn't happen without it? This is something which we really have to discuss and bring some ideas to the debate. And also, if you read that provision, you will see it only refers to data that are processed on the basis of consent of the user, but not those that are processed on other grounds. And we might understand that, but what amount of people really understand these differences? And if they hear no from let's keep using example of Facebook, because the legal ground is not correct, I bet they will just get lost and they will not try again because they will not even understand why the refusal of moving their data, where it comes from. So this is a challenge again to work both with industry and our followers, our audiences. And I think that the final very important one for me is access to information and transparency of data processing, especially with regard to profiling. We all, I think, believe that profiling is a tricky area that should be regulated much more than it is, and it will be. I personally don't like the compromise on profiling. I don't think it's a good compromise. I would prefer much stronger regulation, actually prohibiting some of the practices and covering not only fully automated stuff but also semi-automated, because that line between automated and semi-automated is again a very fine line, and personally I don't really know where human beings are involved, where they're only machines, and this is a very tricky area. But we have what we have, and according to what we have, at least we can fight for much more transparency. The the algorithm notion is out there, but again, who knows what will be provided and what should be provided. Are we happy with just a general description that this algorithm is adjusting your news feed to how you interact with the news and that's it? Or do we want really to see the criteria? Do we want to see the code? Nobody will share the code, but maybe we should fight for sharing the code. I don't know. These are difficult questions, and again, I think we have to discuss them internally to be able to discuss them with the industry. And after we do that, which I think starts tomorrow, for me at least, at CPDP, I will speak about this in public, and if you have any ideas that I should bring, please bring them to me so I can bring them tomorrow to CPDP audience. But this is just the conversation. We should then move to action. And I think coming to my last point, our way forward, I really think that within EDRI we should work together on this implementation, at least on some kind of information campaign, so we don't end up having different narratives. It wouldn't be good if in France, Netherlands, Poland, and Germany there were different narratives about what is important, how things should be implemented. The companies are unified, most of them are global, and if I spoke to Facebook in Warsaw, which I did, they said, yeah, it's very interesting what you say, we would like to discuss, but you know, it's far away, we should go to Brussels maybe, no, not in Poland. So for them it's even difficult to discuss this at national level. We operate on national level, so we have to start, I think, doing what they do, building a joint narrative, helping one another in creating a good narrative, strong narrative with good example, with good practices to share. And then just, you know, have a very much more coordinated action next year, especially next year when the thing will be coming into play, so that there is something more than industry voice and DPAs. There is also our voice, coordinated, strong, and built with some good examples. I'm happy to work on that. We already started this conversation with Diego. Edri is happy to coordinate that. So whoever feels that your organization, your group would like to help in this effort, come to us and let's continue the conversation. Thanks.